All right, in this video, we are going to work through the following example. It says write a program to process the payroll file, payroll underscore data.csv. Each record contains the following fields in order: employee ID, first name, last name, email, title, hours worked, hourly pay rate. All right, the program should read the data from the file and then calculate the gross pay and net pay for each employee. Net pay is the gross pay with 6% deducted for taxes. All right, write the process data to a different file. Each record in the output file should consist of the following fields in order: employee ID, last name, first name, hours worked, hourly pay rate, gross pay, and net pay. Okay? All right, so let's take a look. And this is actually the wrong data file. So let me go to the file system and put the payroll file in the correct spot. All right, here we go. All right, so here's what the payroll data looks like. Excuse me. It is a comma separated value file, so that is a text file, right? And so we have in that an employee ID. We have looks like first name, last name, email address, then their job title. It looks like. Okay, then the hours worked, and then the hourly pay rate. Okay. All right, and so that's what we've got. So here is our file. We have 1,000 records. Again, that's the cutoff limit for the free tier on whatever service it was that I used to generate this data. I think it's Makaru. If you're interested, I can pull that up. Yeah. So yeah, you can generate your own data files, and it's ridiculous. The number of types of data that you can have here. I mean, they've got a lot. Bitcoin address, right? Drug names, drug companies. Tons and tons of stuff that you can generate data files for. So it's good for testing purposes. And the free plan, you can get 1,000 rows, right? 1,000 records in your, and you can get it in CSV, JSON, or SQL, which are other, and Excel, which are, these are different kinds of formats. So it's really pretty cool for testing purposes. All right, so what we want to do is, so we need to open all right, and we are going to make a class, public class process payroll, and add a main method header in there, public static void main string args. Okay, so what we're gonna have to do first is read the input file. So let's do that. So try with resources, and then we're going to make a file reader object. And the name of the file is payroll underscore data.csv. And then I'm going to wrap that in a buffered reader. All right, so there's my try with resources, and let's compile that. It's not going to work, of course, right? So first off, I need these imports in there. In this case, I'm just going to do import java.io.asterisk, and that should be enough to get past that error. All right, and so we have these two exceptions, right? You can see the file not found exception, right? It must be caught or declared. IO exception, so that needs to go down here. So catch file not found exception. And I'm just going to print the stack trace, and we can worry about that later. And then IO exception. And one thing I don't, you got to be careful of doing just printing the stack trace is that, let's see. Put it too high up in here, so I need to get rid of that. Scoot all this stuff over. One thing I don't like about, and then I need to add back in this close curly brace here. Oh, this needs to be FR here, not BR. All right, one thing I don't like about just printing the stack trace is that if you do get an error message, it's sometimes hard to tell what's going on in the sense that it looks like how it always looks, right, when an exception is thrown. So but that's a really minor thing, but just in case, I'm just going to change this to get message. And same thing down here. And I forgot a parenthesis here. All right. So with my own message there, it's just easier for me to look at. I just like it better that way. Whereas sometimes with the stack trace, that's printf. Sometimes when you do stack trace and nothing else, it just looks strange to me. All right, so there we go. We have our reader set up. Okay, and so next up we will actually do the reading. All right, so we are going to attempt to read the first line. And then if that's not null, then for right now we are just going to print the line. And then read the next line. All right, and so now when we run it, we should get all of the input lines in here. No, it's BR. Read line. All right, so now each we have the lines that we want to process, right, are written in here. So let's go ahead then and do the processing that we need to do. So looking back here, we need to, let's look back here. It says, The program should read the data from the file and then calculate the gross pay and the net pay for each employee. All right, 6% deducted with taxes. So it doesn't say anything about the taxes. So let's see. Okay, all right. So we just take 6% off. We don't have to worry about that. All right. Okay. So let's do that. All right. So the first thing we want to do is to split this line that comes up, right? We have this line, and so there is a method called in the string class called split, and it will split across whatever character you like, right? Split up a string. So I'm going to split it up across the comma. Okay, so I'm going to take the line that we had, right, and split it across here. So that's going to give us an array of strings. Okay, and I'm going to print that out for you so you can kind of see what it looks like. So the quick and easy way to print out an array is arrays.toString, but you're going to need to add this import up here. So import java.util.arrays up here. All right. All right, and so you can see the result of it here. These lines with the bracket on there are the arrays, right? And all it does is take this string and split it up into an array of strings. So this would be the first element, right? This would be the second element and the third element, and so on and so forth, okay? So it splits it all out. And I can access those parts, right, I can access those parts by just using this array parts right here. All right, so I'm going to turn this printing off. All right, and then so we split that stuff up. We're going to have to calculate this gross pay and net pay, and then we're going to have to write the process data to a different file. It says each record in the output file should consist of the following fields in order: the employee ID, the last name, and the first name. So we can go ahead and working on that. If we do system.out.printf, right, our string, we want to do the employee ID first, then the last name, I guess it was, and then the first name. And actually, I should do that above this read line statement right here. Okay, so, and then I'm going to put, in the first spot, I'm going to put the employee ID. That should be parts 0, right? And then, let's see, what comes next? Last name. So the last name is actually looks like, yeah, Catherine. So the last name is actually in the 0, 1, in the index 2. So that's going to be parts 2 from our array. And then parts 1 is the first name. Oops, forgot a semicolon here. All right, you can see that I am getting the beginning of the information that I want here. One thing I don't like, it's kind of ragged. I really would rather this be in a look nice and lined up, right? If we're generating some kind of report, that's easy enough to do, right? If we just make the length of these fields something, we can do that by putting a length in between the percent and the s on those. So, and that's probably a little too much, right? I don't know that we need that much space. So let's cut that down to 15, let's say. And I don't really want it right justified. I'd rather have it left justified like this. All right, so that's looking a lot better. Okay. What's next? So let's see. What else do we need to add here? Hours worked. Okay. Let's see. So hours worked. Let's see. Where was that at? So hours worked was the next to last. So that would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at index 5. Right. So parts 5. And that's also a string, right? And let's see, probably make that maybe 3 digits. That's probably extreme, but looks okay. All right, next up is the next thing we have to display is hourly pay rate. So I think that was the very last number, right? So we'll add a format specifier in here for that. So probably 5, and then 0.2 F and part 6. It's kind of getting, this line's kind of getting long, so let's put it down here a little bit. So part 6. And that was okay, so the issue is, right, that's a string. I put the format specifier here for S. So what we're going to have to do anyway, right, is we are going to have to convert some things in there, right? We are going to have to, because in the next situation, right, we are going to have to calculate the gross pay and the net pay, right? Those are the two other things. So we're going to have to convert the hourly rate, right? And we would do that with double.parse double and then parts 6, right? And then here we could put hourly rate. What did it not like? deleted that percent there. Hopefully that's it. Nope. Right here. I have a spurious percent sign in there. I gotta get rid of that. All right, let's try that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. All right, next up is gross pay, right? And so that's going to be hours worked. So I'm going to have to convert hours worked over to an integer, and that looks like an integer, right, in this data file here. So int hours worked equals integer.parseInt. That was parts 5, I believe, in our file. The 5th field in there. So now I can replace this with hours worked. All right, next up I could calculate gross pay. That's going to be hours worked times the hourly rate. And then net pay was 6% off, right? So that'd be 94%, right, of gross pay. All right, and then now we can include those in here. So I'm just going to copy this format specifier over. All right, and then put gross pay and net pay. So that probably is not enough in there, not enough fields, but let's take a look and just see how it looks. All right, so we can see that we probably need to add at least another increase the width of the whole thing by 1. So these last two should probably be 6 to make it line up nice and neat. And then I'll throw, these are monetary amounts, so I'll throw in a $sign on those. That may require us to increase the width of even more. Yeah, it does. So let's make these 7. See how that looks. All right, that's looking pretty nice. Let's increase these by 1 more and put a comma in there. So the comma has to go here. Sorry, I put it in the wrong spot. Okay, looks okay. The values are looking pretty good. All right, so there is what we need, right? I think that is everything, right, that we need in the processed report. Each record, yeah, that looks good to me. Each employee ID, last name, first name, hours worked, hourly pay rate, gross pay, and net pay. Okay, so that's what we've got. All this stuff is being written. Okay. All right, so that's good, but we don't want to write this to the screen, right? We want it written to another file. And so what we would do, right, is to open up a file writer. And we need to write that to some other file. So create a file writer object, right? And a buffered write, wrap it in a buffered writer and put that in your try with resources. And give the file, don't use the same file name, right? Don't use your data file either, right, to write over. So I have seen people do that before, and man, it was hard to figure out what was going on until I actually watched them do it. So all right, so everything looks good here so far. All right, so now what we need to do is just to write this to the file, okay? So you can't use system.out.printf to do that, right? We have to use this buffered writer object. So bw.write, okay? And then you can't use string system.out.printf. You would have to use string.format right here. All right, so that should do it. And so now let's test this out and see if we're getting the results that we want to. So we'll compile it and then refresh this, right? We'll see we don't have this file processed payroll.txt. So now we're going to run. All right, there's the processed payroll. And if I double click on it, right, we should see our processed payroll file all written out here, okay? And there are lots of different things that we could do to this file. We could make it look even nicer than it does, but it looks pretty nice. The main thing here is that all the processing is done in there. So, all right, so that's an example of one way to do this processed payroll file. We are going to turn around, right, and then do this in a slightly more advanced way, okay, and in the next video. All right, so that's it for this one.